Hi everyone, happy Wednesday, and for us in the US, happy Wednesday before the 4th, though based on the news I've seen from this past week, me personally, I'm not feeling particularly celebratory regarding the 4th this year, and I could spend this entire video ranting and raving about my reasons. But nonetheless, we're just going to leave it at that and move on. Because I don't want a whole video of coloring a picture for one of Joshua Dunbar's books. At least one of my videos to not be a complete downer. Plus, we all need distractions, right? Like from the world currently burning and going to pot around us. We just do find distractions what we can to get us through the day. And so I want this video to serve as a distraction. So we will try to do that. At least a distraction from everybody else's lives. And I get to talk about my own. So, but what we're going to be doing first, this is out of Gnomes, which is a book printed under Jade Summer. However, it is Joshua Dunbar's work. And this is actually my first picture I'm coloring out of this book, and I'm pretty excited. I decided I wanted to replicate the Caran d'Ache Supracolor watercolor pencils and the Artisto colored pencil demo I did a couple weeks ago in Linka Filinenko's Hello Spring. Hers was on very nice cardstock paper. Everything did really well. And the big thing with Amazon paper is that it's very fragile. Anything that requires a lot of water makes the paper buckle. You have to be very sensitive to its fragility to make it actually work for you. And so in the past, I've had luck with the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle pencils, watercolor pencils, because they require very little water to dissolve. Actually working better on this Amazon paper because they cause the paper to become less fragile, less crinkly. And so I wanted to see if I could replicate the experience with the Supracolors, which is their next product down in the line, I guess price point wise. And so why did I get the Supracolors when I have the Museum Aquarelles? Well, that's because Museum Aquarelles only have 72 or 76 colors, while the Supracolors have 120. And don't get me started on that. But anyway, so here we are. I have all my pencils pulled and working my way through it. And this is the very first. Is this the first? No, this is the second image in the book. I think the first image is the cover. So this is for my hashtag going on. We are now in our second month, which is official, like the official watercolor month too, I think. So even better, great opportunity to try to use water-based mediums and watercolor in your coloring books. Why not give that a try? That's what this tag's for, is just trying out water-based mediums and like watercolors in your coloring books. It is a bit of a challenge, especially depending on the type of paper and the type of medium you use, but it can be done. There's a lot of advantages to it in my opinion, and you get really interesting results and a different look sometimes than you would get using marker or other mediums. And I highly recommend watercolor as a great way to build a base if you have trouble using, say, colored pencils a lot and you have a lot of hand and wrist issues. Instead of layering and layering with colored pencils, I highly recommend using something like markers or watercolors as a base color and then building your shading with pencils on top of it. It takes much less pencil, much less work and effort, and it has greatly reduced arm and wrist strain, for me at least. And one of the benefits of that is because, as you can see with the watercolor pencil, I am just scrubbing down a very light base. I'm not putting layers and layers of pencil on here. I'm just basically scribbling it down, and the softer the watercolor pencil, the more pigment will come off of it, just like any other type of colored pencil. So this is very low effort for my hand and wrist issues compared to layers and layers of colored pencil. So definitely recommend looking into it. And the one bonus of watercolor, and even using watercolor paints, even if you don't want to use the pencils even more, you can also use watercolor paints, Neocolor 2s, any type of water soluble medium to create a base. And the one huge benefit to using watercolor like that as a base is that it's versatile in that you can use it in double-sided books, single-sided books, as long as it's not like an ink tint where it may bleed through the paper. Of course, I always recommend that you test that. On most papers, it shouldn't bleed through if it's a true watercolor pencil. However, there are nuances, so I'm not going to make that blanket statement. I'm just going to recommend that you definitely test that theory if you test it out, if you can, before, and don't take my word for it. But like I said, this is a very quick workup of just laying down a base. I did use a couple different colors on the deer. Just to create some interest when I come back in for pencil shading, but I didn't really have the energy or desire to do that across the board, so we're just sticking to solid colors for everything else. Because I only had so much energy. I worked on this last week. My plan actually was to post this video last Wednesday, and I didn't. I posted the other video I had instead because I knew that Tammy was working on a video. And speaking of which, so Watercolor Summer, like I said, Watercolor Summer 2024 is the hashtag. You can use it on Instagram, on social media, and it's going from June to September, so you have plenty of time, even if the months get away from you. I said through September, didn't I? Okay, yeah. And it's using any water-based mediums. So if it's a water-based marker, like a Crayola Super Tip or something, you can count it. I'm pretty flexible with this tag. If you're just using a water-based medium, anything that really uses water as part of the activation process. And water-based markers also have nuances and things about them that can make them a challenge to use in books as well. I don't particularly like using water-based markers myself. However, I have a lot of good ones that I really should be trying out. So maybe that's a good challenge for me later this summer myself. So we'll see how that goes. However, I didn't get a chance to post these on the community page because I just got back from my trip yesterday, but there were two watercolor summer videos posted while I was gone. I've got I'll do links up here to the top right. So after this, if you want to see even more people using watercolor in their coloring books, and I apologize, I'm coloring a little bit off screen here, check out, there is Tammy did post a video for Tammy Colors 2. She is coloring out of hang on, there we go. She is coloring out of gifts from animals. And so I've got that posted in the top right here. Definitely go check that out. And we'll give that a couple minutes. I'm not sure how long that stays up there. I also have these linked in the description if you want to go check them out later. But then Christopher as well from Christopher's Corner posted a Watercolor Summer 2024 video from Creative Haven Country Farm Scenes. And let's see, we're going to put that in the top right as well. He is using the Artisto Premium Watercolor pencils, which is interesting because I'm using their colored pencils here in this image. And then what is Tammy using? I can't tell. I think she's using watercolor pencils as well. So this is all going to be watercolor pencils. So very exciting. Definitely go check them out. They are co-hosting with me this summer. So anytime, hopefully that I'm near a computer, and they post a video. I'm going to link to it in my community page so that you know that I definitely recommend subscribing to their channels if you haven't already. They are awesome, awesome, awesome possum, as they say, and really enjoy their videos, and definitely subscribe to them, and you can get notifications, sign up for notifications. But I will be posting their watercolor summer videos on the community pages too, just in case you happen to miss those. So and as always, I would like to do a showcase like I've done in previous summers, but Instagram and its changes, of course, make it really hard to do that. I actually need to make sure I go back and comment. A lot of people have already participated this past month, and thank you for that. I appreciate it. I am going to go look at your pictures this week. I have been a little out of pocket since last week, and really the whole month of June just felt that way. But yeah, so we're continuing our base color here, and I do apologize, the lighting is washing the image out a little bit. I noticed that with the colored pencils, so it happens probably right in the middle of this part of the video at some point, but my desk light just broke on me. Like the head of the light lamp just snapped from the base part, and I had to rig up something today to get the lighting to work. I have since ordered a new light that I'm hoping will be a little taller, so maybe it won't wash out my images as much. Lighting's been a bit of a challenge for me just because the type of desk that I'm using, the lighting in my room, I have very limited space on my desk to add in additional lighting or adjust lighting, so that's always been a bit of a challenge for me, but hopefully this new light will help immensely and be more adjustable than what I have right now. And I think I've had this thing like 6 or 7 years, and it did its job, but it's not something I would recommend to other people, just because I feel like, especially if you're recording, you need something that has a little more variety to it and doesn't sit as close to the surface of the desk. You need something that's a little bit taller, I think. So yeah, I also wanted to throw a little love out to Joshua Dunbar. I have not colored in some of his books for a while. I feel like I'm always neglecting somebody when I'm coloring, and I hadn't had a chance to color in any of his books for a while. And then when we were doing, I was doing flip throughs, I was like, boy, I really need to get cracking on some of his books, especially some of the ones I haven't colored in yet, because some of my favorite images that I've colored end up being his. So thus we're coloring out of this one. And when I get to the end, you know, just a little foreshadowing, I am super pleased with the results of this, how this page turned out. So yeah, so that is, I think, all of the watercolor summer news. In terms of, and so here is the finished layer before we add water to it. And these are the Caran d'Ache Supracolors on Amazon paper. So I just wanted to show y'all what it looks like with just the dry pencils on the paper. I thought ahead a little bit this time, and I was like, hey, maybe I should get a few more pictures of the progress. So I think I let this run a little too long though. Oh, there we go. And then I've activated part of it. I use this Artisto water brush. I'm lazy. It's the same size water brush. I use it for everything. But let me tell you, it works for me. So as you can see, I do have to squeeze a little more water. Like there, I put just a little too much on the paper. I have to squeeze a little more water and prime it a little bit before I actually put it on the paper. Now, it does not dissolve as easily as the museum aquarelles, but given that it's not as expensive as the museum aquarelles, but still it dissolves easier than most watercolor pencils, but the museum aquarels still reign supreme for sure. I would say this, however, is something that I'm going to be using. I'll probably be, when it comes to watercolor pencils, I will probably exclusively use museum aquarels or the Supracolors whenever I'm watercoloring on Amazon paper, because just given the fragility of Amazon paper, anything else that requires more water to dissolve just isn't going to work. I still need to try Neocolor 2s and some other non-watercolor pencil type things, but I think just standard watercolors, like watercolor paints, I probably won't be using, just again the sheer amount of water that has to come with them. I probably won't be using those on Amazon paper very much. It's going to be something like this that I can scribble on the paper and activate with water. And even then, it has to be able to dissolve very easily with very little water. And even there, I still run into a few little issues. Like I said, this caused the paper to buckle just a touch more than the museum aquarels. But again, given their price point, that makes sense, and I still think they perform very well across the board. So, definitely they are pricey. However, the thing is too with them, as you can see, they put out a lot of color, particularly when you activate them. They look bright. Now, they're not going to give you an Inktense type color when you activate them, but they do give a rather bright base color, which a lot of people, when they use base colors, want a more neutral light wash of a color, and that's probably typically how you're supposed to do watercolors, is to have more of a light wash base. However, I prefer to have a little more of a color punch on the base, and so I find that the museum aquarels and the Caran d'Ache Supracolors, both Caran d'Ache products, really do provide that. As you can see here, there's the difference with it activated. It does buckle a little bit underneath where the deer head is at, and underneath it does buckle a little bit on that very inside edge of the page, which does cause some issues when I'm coloring with the pencils. And if you push too hard, usually over that buckling, like, it can cause the page to rip, so you have to be kind of careful with that. But in terms of other water mediums I've used in Amazon books that cause it to buckle and everything, like you can see here, this is about a week later, so I didn't start the pencils till this morning, the colored pencils, and so I gave it about a week to dry. I probably could have flattened it out even further if I left it sitting under a really heavy, closed it and like left it sitting under something really heavy to help flatten it out a bit more. You could also reduce buckling by cutting the paper out and then using like a painter's tape or a washi tape or something to tape it down before you add the watercolor to it. Like typically what you do, like with a watercolor painting, to reduce buckling on the paper and like bending and folding. But I don't like to cut my pages out of my books anymore, and so those are some tips to reduce the buckling even more. So, but here I am with the Artisto pencils, coming in with those again. I am like, I am confounded by these Artisto pencils. Because when I tell you, these are the colored pencils. There are watercolor pencils, which actually Christopher uses in his video. I do have the watercolor pencils, which I'll try to use this summer. But the colored pencils, it's a 72 set. And Tammy and I believe Tammy hasn't done hers yet. If she has and I haven't seen it, then boy howdy, I'm behind. But I'm still gathering samples to use for my Artisto colored pencil review. And when I did the Hello Spring video, excuse me, I had an air bubble or something. When I did the Hello Spring video a couple weeks ago, I felt pretty set on these pencils. I was like, you know, they lay down, and I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, these lay down really nicely on this nice soft cardstock paper. And I was like, they lay down so well, but the color choices, like, I don't know, it's something about the palette the curated color chart that just drives me crazy. Like, it feels like there's too many mid-tones. There's not enough dark tones. There's a lot more light than dark. It's light and medium and not a lot of dark tones. And I was like, oh, if they just had a 120 set of this, or I'm not going to ask them to repurpose their 72 set, but instead just give us more dark colors and expand it to a 120 set. Like, I would totally be on board with that. But I figured when I walked away, I was like, I would use these if there were more colors, and they lay down great, but I was like, am I going to really use them that much when I have other more expanded palettes to use? And at the time I was like, no, I'm probably not going to end up keeping these. I'm trying to be more mindful about what I have and this and that. And then I'm like, let's try these on Amazon paper and just see what they do, because I notoriously have problems with colored pencils on Amazon paper. They just don't do what I want them to do. Or I have to use heavy pressure and this and that. And y'all, these might be some of my favorite pencils I've used on Amazon paper. I've got to do another page. I think I'm going to do another marker and pencil page before my official review, just to make sure this wasn't a fluke. But today I wasn't feeling like super heavy pressure, probably because I haven't had to go to work in a week and I'm feeling more relaxed. That right there is probably why. That is, just ask when was the last time I had to be at work, and how bad of a work day was it, and let's correlate that with how much pressure I use on my pencils, and how stressful my life is, and that probably explains a lot. So I actually went in with a pretty light touch on these today, light to medium touch, and I'm getting closer on this because I realize the light is washing it out a bit, so it's a little harder. If you see me playing with the lighting and stuff, it's a little harder to see the shading, and you'll really see it at the end. I didn't add a filter or anything. I just took it out in natural light, and so then you actually get to see what I see. But under a task light, it's pretty washed out. However, if I don't use a fair amount of lighting, it ends up looking a little blurry and out of focus. So it's like I have to fight with that. I think I countered that one time by changing my color balance settings on my camera, and I might do that again in the future. So that was actually pretty successful, and I forgot I'd been doing that. But anyway, these do so good on Amazon paper for me. Even with the light to medium touch, I was getting plenty of color, and they just went down pretty effortlessly, to be quite honest. I was just really surprised. And then I got, because of my struggle with not having enough dark colors, I decided to incorporate some black later on. You'll see, for some shading for the darker colors in the darker sections, and that actually makes it pop pretty nicely. And so I'm rethinking these now. I still want a 120 set, because I'm a petulant child and refuses to admit I was wrong. No, I still don't think I'm wrong. I still think they need more dark colors. However, it was a challenge to try to find a way around it, because I was enjoying using these pencils so much, and it was kind of nice. I talk a lot about the reason I like having more colors. I know a lot of you artists out there are like, you can make colors with 72. You don't need 120, and you can mix colors, and you can do this and you can do that. And I'm a lazy colorist. It's just who I am as a person, because all my energy bars have to be given to work pretty much right now. And I have nothing left in mental or physical energy to really try to calculate blending colors together and making my own colors with colored pencils. Plus, you have to do layers and layers to do that, and I can't do layers and layers of pencils because I'm limited in how many how much pencil work I can do because of my consistent tendonitis in my right arm and shoulder. So a lot of times you can achieve that by building layers, and I just don't have the capacity to be able to do that. So I have to be able to accomplish things efficiently, like in 1 or 2 layers. And so I prefer the bigger sets of pencils, the bigger sets of watercolor pencils and stuff, so I don't have to do that extra work to get those colors. Would I? Let me tell you, I would love for my arm to not hurt because I've used too much colored pencil in one day. I would love to have the I would love to have days like this where just using light to medium pressure on a page instead of the heavy pressure I'm constantly using. I would love to be able to do that. But unfortunately, I just can't. And so the limited time I have to color, I have to reduce my need to do things like extra things as much as possible so that I can actually color, what I want to color. And I'm just not one to spend a week or 2 on a picture. If it's a whip and I don't go back to it and finish it, it's going to stay a whip for months. As you will see in my completed pages, I still have whips from, I got halfway through pencils on the Artisto pencils on the Color It Eerie Enchantments book, and I still haven't finished that picture yet. Like, once it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and it's really hard for me to finish long-standing whips. But I will say, I really did so I used maybe 2-3 layers at most of the pencils for the deer, and I really did like how the lightest pencil was more of like a yellow brown and the others were more of a reddish brown, but like I went over it all with the yellowish brown pencil and it actually comes together very nicely. I don't know how much blending is actually happening, but you can create pretty cohesive colors. And that was a bit of a challenge too, being able to do that. Instead of finding instantly the 3 colors that I needed for the deer, I had to use 2 reddish browns and 1 yellow brown, and I was like, this is not going to look right. But yet somehow I put them together and they work. So I do like this set in that it does make me work a little harder. I don't normally have the time and ability to do it, and I apologize again if I'm coloring a little off camera. I hopefully will correct my mistake here in a minute. But I do like that these make me have to think a little harder and challenge a little more to get what I want to get. And based on the results that I did get from this one, I really do think my opinion of these have changed. I still think if you are looking for a quick, if you are looking to not have to think a lot about shading and you just want to be able to pick the color you need, particularly the dark color that you need, and just go on and not think about I know that one of the suggestions I've seen over the years has been to use the opposite on the color wheel. Like if you have a dark green, for instance, try using a really dark red for shading. And I haven't tried that yet, but I would like to. But see, I know there are people out there that are like me usually and just don't have the time or ability, or maybe that's just something they don't want to do. Like, we all color for different reasons. Some of us color just to relieve anxiety. Some of us just want a pretty picture. Some of us just want, and we want to get to those with as little effort as possible. Some of us want to spend days and weeks on a picture, just carefully crafting it and building layers to get just the absolute perfect shading that we envision in our minds. That's relaxing to us. Each one of us have our different nuances of how we like to color and why we like to color. And it's one of the things I find so fascinating when it comes to art, is just how everybody approaches it a little differently. And I do consider coloring art. I mean, you're not drawing, but you're bringing that page to life with color. And I feel like that in itself, and how you go about it, because no two people's interpretation of that image or how you want to color it or how the end result should look will ever be the same. And so I think it's fascinating and an art form in of itself. Now, it's a little tricky because I don't think this is something you can necessarily market per se, unless you want to do coloring book covers for artists. Now, that's a way. I think that might be a way to go about it. But like in terms of expressing yourself in art and creativity, I do feel like it could be argued that it's an art form in of itself in regards to that. So nobody come for me. I'm not saying I'm not saying you know, it's I'm not saying it's something that, you know, I don't know what I'm saying. I think I'm making sense, and then I'm getting worried I'm going to offend somebody, and oftentimes I get off in the weeds like that. So we'll just leave it at that. In my opinion, that's how I feel about it. But anyway, I really think I've changed my opinion on these. I most of what you hear that from me in these reviews and my experiences gets echoed in those reviews. So like, if you don't like watching reviews, then you've pretty much got the nuance of what I'm going to say, which is these lay down great. I think they do great on smooth paper. I think they do great on textured paper like Amazon paper, which is very unusual for a colored pencil set for me to say that. I love the makeup of these pencils. I think if you are okay with like using black for shading, getting a little challenging with mixing colors and working with a limited color palette, like I think this is a great set. But I just, if anything, if they make a 120 set or higher of the Artisto pencils, I will tell you right now, they will be contenders for top spot easily contenders for my top spot, and that's saying something. So here you can see I've done the deer and the sky, and you can just see, like I said, this was effortless. Like I really just did not have to do that much work to get a color payout with these pencils. What I'll be curious to see is, because these are a little bit crumbly. Now you can see right here where the paper is moving a bit back and forth. That's where that bend has happened, where the paper has buckled, and it's making it a little difficult to color over it with pencil. It's one of the reasons, like, I don't necessarily mind that a picture looks a little wavy from the water. It's just the integrity of the paper and trying to go back over it with other mediums is where the problem lies. So you'll see me play around with the greens here, but like, no, seriously, I really like my Artistas right now. They're kind of top of the list in my set, but I don't like how they do as much on Amazon paper. They're passable and I will use them, but like, when I tell you I like these, how these do on Amazon paper so much more than I like the Artistas, I think because those are more wax based and these aren't quite as wax. These don't have quite as much wax in them. That's why I'm saying if these come out with a 120 set and it was a great color palette, like I love the Arctic's color palette. So I love the Arctic color palette, and I love the Artisa lay down of pencils. And like, if these could come out with like the Arctic's color palette and like then have their lay down, I mean, yeah, these probably would be my favorite pencils right now. And that's, like I said, that's what confounds me so much about them. But I'm just big on, if there's a color I'm looking for, I'd rather pull it out of the, look at my swatch and be able to pull it immediately rather than having to try to work at it to get that color. And that's just where I'm at in life right now. So, anyway, so yeah, that has been, I did not expect that when I colored with these on Amazon paper. I'll figure it out in a minute, guys. Sorry about that. So I will say this probably wraps up my ramblings on the craft of coloring, but really covering my thoughts on the Supracolors and the pencils, the colored pencils. I will be trying to do another page off camera with markers and then the Artisto pencils across the top, just again to confirm, make sure this wasn't, because it could be the watercolor pencils changed the texture of the page slightly, and when I activated them with water. But if you notice, they're not as shiny as like more heavily wax-based pencils are. There, I figured it out. Look at me. Gold star for me! It may be that it changed the texture of the paper, so that's why I want to try them with markers too before I do my official review, which is coming. I think. I need to figure out with Tammy where she's at on hers. I try to post mine after hers because she gives such a good, thorough, detailed review, and mine's kind of like, here's a few extra nuances looking at it from a laying over base color perspective, and additional thoughts. So I usually try to wait till she posts her video first. So, but yeah, no, I'm gonna keep them and probably leave a review on them and ask them to please come up with a 120 set. So, because that would be nice. It would be super. All right, so quick recap. I guess we'll shift a little bit to the chat portion other than the color portion, more of the overall life chat portion of this. I did see everybody's comments. A lot of people really like the Mothman video, like the idea of the cryptid series, so I'm very excited to see that. My brother and I talked about how we really should come up with like a cryptid travel bucket list, because the Hopkinsville so the Hopkinsville thing is very interesting. There's a Hopkinsville cryptid, and I thought it was aliens, and apparently at first they thought it was goblins, and so it's called the Hopkinsville Goblin in the cryptid book. And so my brother and I were arguing about that. Apparently it required debate, because I've just never heard of anything not in a fantasy realm referred to as a goblin. Like, I've never heard people in real life refer to any existing magic, existing fantasy creature or not in this realm as a goblin. Only in like fantasy series, right? It's like, okay, they're goblins, or they're also kobolds and drakes and so, but apparently I guess that's what they originally called them, was goblins, because I guess at that time aliens hadn't really become a big thing just yet. And then later they said it was probably aliens. So yeah, Hopkinsville goblins. Anyway, so y'all seem to be really receptive of that. And then of course I posted my next coloring book collection. I guess this is still more news about coloring. I'll mention again at the end, but I think I'm going to do my completed pages on Friday. Sunday will be a picture. I just can't do vlogs, guys. I keep trying to do clips, but I feel awkward recording myself around other people. And so typically I think what I'm just going to do is take pictures and then do a voiceover of the pictures. And like, it's kind of like one of those boring slideshows your aunts that went to, the Bali Islands or something make you sit through. Well, maybe not that boring, but, and it won't be that many pictures. But no, I think overall, I just do better with pictures. I have a couple little clips I might throw in there. But for the most part, I'm going to post some pics. Sunday, I'll just kind of post a recap of my trip. It's a very non-coloring type video, so I figured Sunday'd be a good day. That way, if you just prefer my coloring content, you don't have to, you can go, well, I mean, any day of the week, you could just go do your own thing. But I just figure Sunday, people are going to have other things to do. But it's going to recap our trip this year in pictures. And I'm also going to show, hopefully, at least pictures of the things I picked up this year. And a lot of them are anime, video game based, all kinds of weird random things, and sci-fi and stuff like that. So if you like that kind of stuff, I'll have pins, I'll have posters to show, probably t-shirts. maybe. I can't remember. I'll show some of the things, at least the pens and the prints I'll show, and then, oh, the little stuffed animals I bought. But here I'll talk at least a little bit about just overall how the trip went. But yeah, no, I wrapped up work last Tuesday, stayed the night with my parents, and my brother and I headed out first thing Wednesday morning. So this year, so we go every year to a convention in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania called Too Many Games. This is actually their 20-year anniversary of the convention, and we've been going. I think this is our 7th year. I have to go back to be sure, but I think 2016 was our first year we went. Which would be, well, maybe, yeah, it would be 7 years because they didn't do one 2020. So we this year we drove last year. We'd been flying, and then 2 years ago we had this just hellacious start when our flight got canceled. Couldn't get a flight out to the next day. We ended up flying to New York instead, taking the Amtrak down to get a rental car. And in retrospect, it really wasn't that bad, but at the time it was very exhausting. And so the next year we were like, hey, why don't we try to drive it instead? Because that way we're not reliant on the airlines, because it doesn't seem like this delay cancellation thing is going to get any better anytime soon. And so we decided to drive it last year, and we did it in one big trip up there one day and then one big trip on the way back. And I think total it goes between 12 to 15 hours depending on how you go total. And so that was pretty successful. I didn't think I was going to be able to handle driving or riding in the car for that long, just because I used to commute to Nashville for a couple years, and it was like that and going to college another 2 hours away. There were some nights I was in the car for there was like 1 or 2 nights a week I was in the car for 3.5 hours total for the day. And so that really burnt me out on long-term rides, and I just didn't think I could handle it. But I guess enough time has passed where I handled it last year. I love the flexibility of it. We can decide when we're going, what time. Just the rental car really is what is the only thing that's guiding us in terms of, if weird things come up, it's easier to change our schedule with the drive. We switched off driving to make it more tolerable. There's a whole lot more room for stuff, which might be to our detriment, honestly, but and plus we could save money by bringing food and stuff with us rather than having to make a grocery store run when we come up. So there were just a lot more advantages to driving. So we decided to do it again this year. However, we decided to only do part of the drive Wednesday and it was about an hour off the interstate, going to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is where the Mothman's from, as I talked about in that video. And so we headed out. I think we were on the road 5-6 hours. It didn't feel bad at all. That was perfectly tolerable. And so we had stopped and ate lunch, I think, at one point. Again, we could bring our food with us, which made it a whole lot easier. No, we stopped for lunch that day. But went to we got there, we checked into the hotel. We had just enough time to go check out the Mothman Museum and some of the different shops there, and had so much fun. Oh my gosh. The people there are so fun. I have to say, the people at work, like the Mothman Museum and store, the different shops along that strip, we had so much fun talking with them. We made the joke that I should have brought my Mothman picture with me and just stuck it on like the wall of the museum so it could just become another exhibit to look at. Don't think I wasn't tempted. But anyway, and they apparently absolutely loved, I talked a little bit about the picture, got to talking about Mothman, and I talked about the picture I colored, and of course they had to see the picture I colored, and And so that went over well. And there was so much. This was the year of stuff, y'all. There was so much cool stuff at the stores there. There was a hobby shop, comic shop called Brown's that had the coolest stuff and like very reasonably priced too. When I'm showing their stuff on Sunday, I'm going to be linking to some of the places we went to because they have online shops, and I want to give them a boost because I just think they're awesome, and like their stuff was very reasonably priced. I got a just adorable picture of Mothman cuddling with cats on a roof, and it's like this heavy duty canvas, really nice canvas paper it's printed on, and it was like $15. And when I tell you that like that thing would have been $60 or more at a convention, it shocked me how good a quality print that was. I was just expecting a regular print, but it's beautiful. And we got pins. I got a T-shirt. We both got little Mothman stuffed animals. My brother got a gigantic Mothman. I got the smaller version of him. And then, so it was kind of rushed though, just because we only had a couple hours before all the things closed. But so we got to see a lot of it, but we didn't get to see all of it. So I think next year, I don't know, we might go back next year, or we might do something different next year and then go back. But it was great. You know, the hotel there was great. It's a small town, so I think they only had like 2 hotels. But the hotel was really nice. You know, at this point in my life, I am not caught up in frou-frou-ness. If it's clean, it has a fridge and a microwave, and the beds sleep well, I'm happy. That's really all I need. I'm not picky. At least, I don't think I'm that picky. Oh, quickly as an aside, here is one of the areas I was talking about. I used a very sharp black colored pencil from the set to just give a little bit of an edge to the clover to make it stand out, and then the different stems of the plants. And I like that so much, you'll see me continue it down this picture. And I feel like using the black on the darker areas of the picture, because I don't have that dark color of that shade to use, really helped it to stand out. And so in this case I liked using it, but of course I tried not to go super heavy with the black on it. So just a quick note on that. But yeah, no, we stayed the night and then we headed out early the next morning. That was the bulk of our drive, which was about 7 or 8 hours. We had went through Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia the first day, and then the second day it was West Virginia, a little bit of Ohio, and then Pennsylvania proper. We made great time till we hit Pennsylvania, and then there were a whole bunch of slowdowns. And, you know, I think I figured it out that, like, if I'm good and fresh, about 8-9 hours max is about the length of time I can handle a day in the car, driving or otherwise. And that day actually went by pretty well. Didn't have a lot of problems. We went ahead and picked up our tickets for the convention, went ahead and checked in at the hotel. We had to do a new hotel this year. Normally we use a Homewood Suites that has like a full suite with a full kitchen, semi-full kitchen. I can't quite remember, but they were doing renovations this year, so they didn't have a lot of room availability. So we went with the hotel next to them, which was just more of a standard hotel room. It was a True, like a TRU, also by Hilton, I think. And it was a new hotel. It was alright. I have to say the bed slept pretty good, though they were on platforms instead of box springs, and my back didn't particularly like that. The biggest problem we had, we really didn't miss having the living room or anything like that. Couple things, like the fridge was a very teeny tiny fridge, and because we carry ice packs and stuff with us with all the food that we have when we travel, we need a fridge with at least a small freezer section that we can put the ice packs in. So we need like at least a smaller mini fridge or taller mini fridge. So we had to get creative and just use ice on the way back. We had to get real creative on what we could fit in that fridge, because it was smaller than we expected, and there was no microwave in the room. And I was like, gosh, I get like there was no coffee pot either, but you know what? That's fine. You know, coffee pots in rooms are can be kind of sketchy at times anyway, because you don't know how well those are cleaned, and it's not a dig on housekeepers. I'm just saying they only have so much time per room, so sometimes they got to prioritize what they clean. And so coffee makers have always been kind of iffy to me anyway, so I don't necessarily miss that, but like at least have the microwave in there. The one we had in Point Pleasant had a bigger fridge and a microwave in there, even though it was a standard room. And so, like, you had to go all the way downstairs to use a microwave, and that kind of sucked because mostly we're using it in the morning for like breakfast. And you know, you're half awake in the morning, you don't want to have to stumble down into the lobby to have to heat something up. So that kind of sucked. That was our biggest gripe. We really just missed the kitchen portion of our other room. So I think next year, the only problem with the Homewood Suites is that they're incredibly expensive, and you can't get a room with a bigger kitchenette area. Well, you can, but it's still, I don't know, they're still more expensive than they should be. So I think next year we're familiar enough with the area now that I think we're going to broaden our search a little bit for hotels next year, just to save a few bucks, and try to get a room that more meets our needs. But you know, overall it was clean, and like I said, the beds slept great. It was just really the lack of that microwave and the fridge size were the biggest problems that we had. So but we just hung out that night. I think we ordered pizza, and then the next day is when the convention started, and so that went from Friday about 2 o'clock to Sunday at 5 o'clock, and it was a good solid year. They had voice actors from Baldur's Gate 3 and Genshin Impact, if you're familiar with those games in particular, though they've done a host of other voices. Keith Silverstein, who's done like hundreds of voices, was probably, him and Steve Bloom were probably the biggest names there. But there was Neil Newbon, Stephanie Bray. There's a bunch of other names that do like Pokemon voices. Just in the last few years, they've really been adding a lot of voice actors for video games and stuff, which I think is interesting. And then they had different YouTube streamers for games and stuff. They had like all kinds of stuff, and you can see here, okay, as an aside, you can see here I'm getting a little scribblier with the black just because I was getting impatient. It still turns out okay, but I probably wasn't being as smooth with this one as I was with the ones to the right, the clovers. So I was just wanting to move a little faster. And but yeah, it was I mean, they take over the whole expo hall now. They just have so much stuff in so many different stages. And I did like I checked out a life of a content creator panel. Some Call Me Johnny was on there, who's been on YouTube for like 15 years, mostly game related stuff, some anime, and that was interesting. Just some takeaways from that. And then what was I gonna say, we did the voice panels. We did Zombies Ate My Pop Culture, which was just talking about when zombies were first used in media, like books, music, movies, and then it just takes it through the different generations, and that was interesting. Apparently quite a number of zombie events that aren't like international or in other specific areas like 28 Days Later are actually seem to all come out of Philadelphia, or not Philadelphia, but Pennsylvania. So don't know what that's about. Probably because a lot of the creators are from that area, but it is still funny. And then Saturday was more panels. I didn't go to as many as I thought I would, just because like when we look at the schedule, we're like, oh, this looks great, this looks great. We'll add it to our schedule. But man, once we get there, we're just kind of like, man, what is it I just absolutely cannot miss? Plus, there was one stage they had right next to the convention where everybody was real loud and you couldn't hardly hear anything from it. And so, like, we ended up just opting out of that one because that stage just wasn't a useful stage this year. So there's still things that they're working out too. But I got to paint a miniature. They had a free paint and take table. And I'll show pictures of that on Sunday. That was fun. Tammy from Tammy Colors 2 is big into painting miniatures, and like I need another hobby to consume my life and my wallet, but I felt like I did a pretty fair job. Actually, probably because of my coloring, years of coloring, I at least can do a better job than I would have before I started coloring. So I mean, it's fun. I don't need another hobby right now. So I'm struggling with that. Um, just walk. A lot of times it's just walking around checking out the different things. They had indie games. I think there's a list on Steam this year of the indie games that they had for in terms of video games. They also had indie board games. I was trying to think of what else. I recapped it, summarized as best I could on Instagram. So if you saw those posts, they gave a little more context. But it was just panels and marketplace and different little events like that for 2 days, essentially 2 days and some change, spread over 3 days, and it was a lot of fun. Like I said, this was the year of stuff, though. This was the year that the marketplace really delivered. I definitely get tempted to buy prints and t-shirts and things in past years. Last year, I didn't like the marketplace as much last year. I think I really leaned into buying pins last year. My brother got me into like pin collecting, and but this year, oh my gosh, they had so many different types. So the marketplace is, of course, a lot of video game vendors, but also just all kinds of like art, pins, t-shirts, lanyards, backpacks, crocheted stuff, like just about anything you can imagine, like old nostalgic video, like stuff from the 80s and 90s. Like there's a whole mishmash of stuff in the marketplace, and this was the year like I just I bought prints, like posters, and I bought pins, and I bought t-shirts, and I bought little stuffed animals, even though I try not to get me stuffed animals because I don't know what to do with them. But my brother and I both cleaned up quite a bit this year. This was the year of stuff. Each year seems to have a theme, and this was our year of stuff. Oddly enough, not many video games. But like just like everything else, the market for used games, new games. Sorry, I'm playing with the lighting here. Sorry for all the flashing. I'll get there. The market for new and used video games is being affected just like everything else. Prices are going up, which oddly some of the values of the games are dropping. So I don't understand how that's making any sense, but I every year I go. My husband's a huge old video game collector, and so I'll go and I'll take pictures just to give him, like, he can check online for current market pricing, but I think that gives him a look to see how how the games are actually being sold versus what they're priced at, valued at online. And so this year I games I've seen for years and know what his games are worth, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all this stuff is way overpriced this year. It was like, even my brother commented, like, normally he goes and he does his homework, he price checks locally, he price checks on eBay, stuff like that, and he's like, if I can see the game in my hand, make sure it's legit, this and that. Generally there have been games that are $25 maybe over what he could get on eBay. Like, he's willing to haggle and negotiate, but like, that's understandable, right? Like, anywhere from $50 maybe up. He's willing to negotiate and be okay with getting it in person, because like, he gets it, right? These places have to make some money off these games. But when I say these places were like hundreds of dollars over where else you could buy the game, it was ridiculous. I've not, in 7 years have I ever seen it this extreme. And like I said, the values of these games are going down too, so I don't understand how the prices are going up. But there were just some crazy prices, and none of those games moved either all weekend. I kept an eye on them, and there was one copy of a game he had, for the Nintendo, my husband, that was selling for almost $3,000, and that thing didn't move all weekend. They didn't even try. Normally, they price them higher on Friday, and then Sunday, if you go and negotiate with them, a lot of times they'll lower the price or something, just so they don't have to, pack it back up, right? No, there was no movement on prices this year, and so, bit disappointing in regards to that. Weirdly enough, I don't buy many games for my husband there, because he prefers to see them in person, just to make sure that they're legitimate. Because, I mean, like I just spoke to, some of these games are worth some serious money, and so you have to be very careful about what you buy. And, I don't know enough about games from the 80s and 90s to be able to tell if something is a legitimate game or not. He's looked at enough of them over the years in building his collection that he knows, he can spot something better than I can. So, and he does not want to go with us, so it's okay though. I think he was much happier back when grandmas were cleaning out attics and selling games from their kids and their grandkids, and putting like $5 on them, and buying a $5 game that ended up being worth, a couple thousand. I think those days were the days that he much preferred collecting anyway. He liked finding those unique finds like that, and it's much harder to do that these days with the internet. So, but yeah, not a lot of game buying this year, but a whole lot of buying of other stuff. But still fun year. Had a great time. Was starting to get a little tired. I think Sunday, the new meds that I'm taking and everything worked really well this year. Probably had more energy than I've had at any other con we've been to. And but even with that, just because A, I'm older, and B, I still don't get out and my stamina is not that much. I don't get out and walk and do that much in 4 or 5, 6 days packed together like that. Like, by Sunday, by Saturday night, I was feeling a little fatigued. By Sunday at like 3 or 4 o'clock, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty much conned out this year. And but like I said, it happened a lot later in previous years, so I consider that a win. Slept really good all the nights. Didn't need my sleep medication. And we headed back. Monday was an all-day drive on the way back. It was rough. Again, 12 to 15 hours total in the car when you count lunches and gas and stops and stuff and meals is a lot. And I had to take like a literal 20-minute nodded off doze, not in the driver's seat obviously, but in the passenger seat. I dozed a little bit, and after that I was much better, but it was still reason nobody heard from me yesterday. Like, I didn't message anybody yesterday was I slept. I got up to feed the cats, then I went to bed another 2 hours yesterday morning. I slept in the middle of the day, and then I went to bed, I think at normal time. Like, I just rested. I just did not have the energy to do anything yesterday. But I am feeling better today. I felt well enough to do this. So, recovery's nice. I will have this week off as well. And so I'm planning to get some coloring done. Um, I really want to get my office tackled this weekend. And see if I can finally get this room in some semblance of order. And I'm kind of hoping I can start on that some tomorrow, maybe work a few hours each day on it. Here I am with the black again because his hair is a darker turquoise color, and I really wanted to make sure it was different than his blue skin tone. I wanted to use that black again to really emphasize this is a darker part of the picture. And again, it works out really well. So, just as an aside on that. So, kind of the plans this week. I'm going to try to do a completed pages on Friday. And then, like I said, Sunday, I'll show you the stuff I bought from the convention. It may just be pictures of stuff because obviously it's going to be hard to put some of those posters in front of the camera and stuff. Like I said, if you like anime, video games, that type of stuff, you'll probably enjoy that one. If not, and you just want to see the color and stuff, I completely get it. And I'll also post pictures from the events and kind of describe, like, all the people we saw and stuff. And yeah, they had 20,000 people attend the convention last year. This year, I think it was about the same. In previous years, we've always noted a marked increase. However, this year, it felt about the same. Though I will say Saturday felt even crazier than it normally does because a lot of people will just get like a one-day pass for Saturday. And this Saturday felt even crazier. And I think it's because, again, people are limited in what they can get that is extracurricular fun stuff. And my brother and I are very fortunate that we're able to take this trip each year. But we still, find ways to cost cut when possible. So we can spend it on other stuff. So, I mean, my brother and I are very fortunate that we can do that. But a lot of people, just especially if they have kids that want to go to the convention and stuff, are limited in like excess in fun stuff income this year. And I think a lot of people that normally would get a 3-day pass ended up opting for the 1-day pass this year. Because of cost reasons. And not, for once, I'm not going to dig on a convention. So the convention had a price point of $60 roughly for 3 days in 2021, and now it's 90 something. But this is a rare occasion where they have actually added, like, they take all the halls in the convention now. That just started the last 2 years. They have brought on artists to where you can get autographs now. They didn't really have like voice artists and like big names in like the video game industry until the past few years. They've added on a lot of things like this miniature paint and take thing they did. They do have concerts. It's a rare occasion where they have upped the price of the ticket, but they've also upped the value of it. It's not like they're just raising the price and then giving you the same thing or even less, which is what we're seeing pretty much across the board with everything else in life right now. So I certainly won't knock on them on that. I still think it's a good value for what you get. But I do understand that it's just not a price point that some people can meet because of just throwing my hands up of everything that's been going on lately. So but I will say, like, the other days, it felt about the same. I don't know if they'll see a massive jump this year like they've seen in previous years. I would be surprised. Not really surprised. I mean, I would be surprised if I saw a massive jump. But I don't think it's through any fault of their own. It's just how things are. And if the video game vendors continue to try to jack up the prices of their games too much, you might start seeing a deterioration, because there was a whole lot of people looking, but there weren't a whole lot of people buying, y'all. So I don't know. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. I, like I said, just kind of enjoy hanging with my brother the whole time. And I did have a moment where I tripped and fell because I'm a klutz. No, it's I have depth perception issues because I'm nearsighted in one eye and farsighted in the other. And my optometrist, I didn't know this till about a year or two ago, but my optometrist was like, "Do you ever just run into door frames and you're like, I thought that was farther off than it should be? Or have you ever hit a curb and like, hey, wait, that was closer than it looked to me?" And I was like, yes. And he's like, yeah, he's like, because of the nearsighted, farsighted difference in your eyes, you have a problem with depth perception. And he's like, it can also affect things like if you go to watch a 3D thing. It also causes me motion sickness issues. Certain video games that have a smoothing effect with their motion in the game can make me physically nauseous, and I either have to be able to change the settings or like some games just aren't playable for me. I have to take anti-nausea medication. Um, but I was going down the steps at the hotel in Point Pleasant, and there was a last step that was in a black like rubber kind of covering on the stair, and then there was a white tile underneath. And when I looked at it, it looked like they were on the same level. Like it didn't look like it didn't look like there was another step, and well, there was, and I crashed, banged up and bruised myself a little bit, but I didn't break anything, thank goodness. But just another lesson there, folks. If you have depth perception issues, just you gotta like I got to be a little more aware of that kind of thing. Anyway, so here we are with the finished picture. I am over the moon with how well this picture turned out. I think both things I used did really well on this paper, and it just felt nice to have the time and want to work on a picture like this. I don't feel like I get much opportunity to work on. I mean, this isn't even really a super complicated page, but for me, this took quite a bit of time today, and the watercolor pencils took maybe 30 minutes, 45, and then I would say anytime you use water on Amazon paper, I would highly recommend you not just leave it to dry like for a while, but I would always leave them to dry overnight. Just to make sure that they are fully, completely dry. You could attack them with a heat gun. Attack them, like, don't slam the paper with them. But like you could use a heat gun with them, but I just prefer to give them overnight. Less chance of them crinkling. And like I said, this really only crinkled a little bit where like the deer head is and those blades of grass up underneath it. And that was about it. So the rest of it was pretty smooth. And the colors all came together, and I didn't use any sparkly gel pen on this one because for once I didn't think it needed it, which is very unusual for me. But super pleased with the results on this. And to wrap up with what I was saying, I got back late Monday night. All the cats were accounted for, and the husband were all accounted for. Everybody seemed to do really well. And Bagheera had his blood checked. It kind of has blood sugar checked yesterday, and where I mentioned a few weeks ago it was wonky. Just with that one change in the slight change to one of his daily insulin injections, his blood sugar was perfect. And so I think it was a combination of I was being a little more lax in giving him extra treats during the day. I think it might have been stress. It might have been, I wasn't being as careful with his insulin. Like he's had to take insulin for a number of years. And if you've had to give a cat insulin injections, like, sometimes they build up a lot of scar tissue and stuff. And so sometimes it can be hard to make sure you're actually injecting it rather than injecting it into the scar tissue, which doesn't work as well. And so I think I was being a little more lax about that, because he's lazy and he likes to hide behind things. And oftentimes I'm just trying to get to the next step. And so I don't think I was being as careful with him just because it had been stable for so long and it hadn't been an issue. But it's just one of those things we're going to have to stay on top of. Probably take him in monthly, I think is what she said. So I'll have to remember that next month. But he did really well. He's walking a lot better, a lot better. That was, I think, his issue, and I'm so grateful it was something that was fixable. He's not peeing in the litter box as much either. I've noticed that the last few days. So I do think it has stabilized, at least for now, but we've just got to keep an eye on it. Winry seemed like she did well. She was really mad at me at first when I got home. She didn't want anything to do with me for like an hour or two. But then once I got on the couch, like, she jumped on me and all was seemingly forgiven. BMO seemed to miss me more than I thought she did. Brent was like, I don't even know if she knows you're gone. But I think she did, because she's been weirdly affectionate the last few days. Leroy was thrilled I was home. He's been extra affectionate. Reap Chief's been kind of the same. Reap Chief's always kind of chill about things. He doesn't get very anxious or worked up about stuff. He's a pretty laid back dude. So everything seemed to go well, and I'm glad for that. And hopefully it will continue to go well. But yeah, I'm just going to try to enjoy the rest of my week. And again, I will probably post the completed pages on Friday. And then, like I said, Sunday, a recap of the trip with pictures and kind of a haul. And then next Wednesday, I think I'll have some new books to flip through next Wednesday. I'm kind of collecting them right now. Next Friday will probably be the coloring book collection. And then the next Wednesday will be a watercolor video. We're kind of hitting a stride right now, I hope. My family member that hasn't been doing well, she's been doing a lot better, and so I'm glad for that. And yeah, I mean, just really enjoying the time off, and I'm already dreading not being off anymore, but I've still got time, so it'll be okay. But alright, well, no, this was a long video, but thanks to everyone for watching. If you watched the whole thing, or if you only watched parts of it, I completely understand. There's always jumps in, and I always miss this in the beginning, but there's always jumps in the description so that you can hop around the different parts of the picture if you want to see. And yeah, I think that's about it. Yet another picture for Watercolor Summer 2024 in the books. Check the check box, and we will continue on. So for those in the US, if you get tomorrow off, I at least hope, regardless of the holiday itself and your feelings currently about US politics and the US as a whole, I do hope if you get the time off that you're able to spend your time off doing what you want to do, whether it's spend time with family and friends, or if it's just having a day to yourself, maybe getting some extra sleep, maybe getting some snacks and watching some TV. You know, just as long as you get to do, maybe it's coloring, maybe you just get to do something you want to do. And I really hope that I'm crossing my fingers and hoping and praying that you can at least get that, if nothing else. So thanks guys for watching, and bye for now.